Hello, today we'll be going over how to make a PowerPoint presentation accessible. We'll just go over a few basic tools that you can use in PowerPoint to make your presentation easily accessible for someone, whether they're using a screen reader or if they just have maybe low vision. But we want to make our content accessible for everyone. So here I have just a default presentation open. I just used a slide deck that was available just as default when you open PowerPoint to create it. But we do have on the etsu.edu brand website a PowerPoint slide deck that you can use. It's has some of the default settings and colors and things set up for you that are our brand colors, and it's set up to be accessible. But we'll just use a blank PowerPoint slideshow here to learn from. So the first thing I always encourage folks to do, whether you're working in Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, even in Adobe Acrobat, is to go into the properties of the file. So in this case, in PowerPoint, we'll click on File, and you'll want to go down to the Info tab. It's a little different than Word. You'll want to go over here and go to the title. So right now it just has a default PowerPoint presentation. Well, we want to give it a better title than that. So we'll just call this one Training for Accessible Presentations. And that'll be the name for this, but you can name yours whatever you need. Okay, so here we have our title slide, and we already have for us a title text box here and subtitle. We want to use the default setups for slides, the layouts that they have. So here we'll want to give the title again. We'll just say Training for Accessible Presentation. And you could give a subtitle here. It's not required, just as long as you have your title in these two places. So I'm going to skip over and leave. And I also have down in here my notes during the training to refer to. So if you can see that also. And just so you know, a screen reader will read your notes section. So if you want to give a little more information during your presentation for a viewer, they can go down and find or use the reader to read those notes. So let's go to slide 2. And here I have some best practices. So when designing your presentation, you want to use fonts that are easily read and large enough to see at a distance. So imagine someone sitting in the back row of the room that you're presenting. And also you want, if you give out handouts, which is usually a good idea, if you're working in a large room or people maybe have poor vision, they can revert to the printout. So you want to make sure your printed copy also has a font size, that you're using that is easily read on the printout. And also, just a note, please don't put like white text on a yellow background. I know that gold color is one of our brand colors, but sometimes I've seen folks use white on it, and that can cause issues. So also have a note to not go below a 24-point font on the slides. Now I do have quite a bit of text on this training exercise here, and it's probably a good idea to not crowd your slide with a lot of text. That's a lot of information for someone trying and to be able to read. It can be quite difficult if you don't have enough spacing between your points on the slide. So you can always go in and adjust your spacing. Just highlight your text here and use the built-in, the built-in tools here for the spacing. Just for training's sake, I'm not going to change the size of the text here, but usually 1.5 is good in most cases, and encourage it in Word documents too, just to give a little more breathing room. And then highlighting text is shown in my example number 2 here. It's a great way to call attention to content, but you want to be careful about colors and using that to emphasize information. People can be colorblind and it may make it difficult to read. So you just want to ensure color is not the only way that you can convey information. Especially later in this presentation, I have a graph, and we can kind of do a quick, easy check just to see if we have enough color contrast, just using the tools here in PowerPoint. Now, I want to pull up a tool that we do provide and talk about on our etsu.edu/brand. It's called Cooler's Color Contrast Checker. And there are a lot of contrast checkers out there online, so you don't have to use this one. We just found that this one's pretty convenient to use. Let me pull it up here during my training and try to split the windows here so we can have both the documents at the same time. So apologize if this is quite small on your screens, but what I want to use here, I have the Cooler's Color Contrast Checker pulled up, and I have from a previous training a different color set here, but you can have an option here for the text color and background color. So if I click on the text color and use the little eyedropper tool, I can actually go into my document and select with precision, say that white text, and we'll choose the background color, and I'm going to get the eyedropper again and select the gold. So here it's showing an example, and it's very poor contrast. So that's why it's best to just kind of check sometimes your contrast. Sometimes you may not think that it's poor contrast or difficult to read, but maybe for someone else, low vision, it would be difficult. So you can see here with a black color text, we get a super. And it will tell you here whether it's small or large text too, how well it will read. So you can think of your printouts too. So let me minimize that, and I will make our presentation back to normal size here. So I do have in my notes on our ETSU brand site, we also have a link to the Hemingway editor, and that can be very useful to make your text real clear and concise, maybe help you kind of cut down the amount of text you have on your slide. And that way you can too adjust the reading level of your audience to just take that in consideration. So let's go to slide 3 here, and you notice up here I have best practices, but I have the word continued. With your slides, if someone's navigating through your slideshow using assistive technology, they would easily lose their place if you have multiple slides that have the same title. So it's best to vary the title a bit, even if you had to put continued or part 1, 2, or 3, just something that'll help someone get back to maybe the place that they were wanting to review some information. Now here, when you design your presentation, you want to include alt text with your visuals. Most screen readers stop reading alt text if you have more than 125 characters. So you want to just be real short and concise with your alt text. I go over alt text also in our Microsoft Word document training, and we'll go over adding alt text to images in this presentation also. You can add meaningful text to hyperlinks and in the screen tips, but I do want to warn, when you use screen tips, and we'll go over that when we create a hyperlink, some assistive technology doesn't read screen tips, so you don't want to rely on that. You want to rely on creating descriptive text, and I'll give you an example of that later. And you want to avoid using transition slides. They don't always play nice with screen readers. And You can create accessible PDFs and other file formats from this presentation. So just like when you're working in Microsoft Word, as long as you're using the tools properly here in PowerPoint, that will travel across when you're exporting to, say, a PDF. And just as long as you're making sure that when you export to a PDF that you make sure that you're doing it with the accessibility tags included. And I'll show you that too toward the end. I'm going to go down to slide 4 here, and here's a terrible background. I'm sure we've all seen at least some presentation out there with a background that was just much too busy for the text that was on the page. Can't really read this. So you can right click on this image and let me click on it and right click, and then you can go into format the background and adjust the transparency to make it a little easier. But you have to ask yourself, at what point is it really that useful to have an image in the background if you have to fade it out so much so that text can be read? So sometimes simpler is better, and maybe just using a solid background and just checking your contrast. And once again, I want to caution, if you're using the transparency settings on the presentation, is check your contrast. And a good way to do that is if you go into View and click Grayscale, which it doesn't work here, but I will show you that here in a moment when we're using a table, is a good way to check about how easily or how good the contrast is. So I'm going to go back to Color View here, and I'm just going to say Solid Fill, and see you can change your background colors. Maybe just instead, just do none. So I'll let you play around with your backgrounds, but just be mindful of having something busy in the background. And also, please don't use animation or flashing transitions. That can be difficult for somebody. You can use the live caption feature in your presentation as an accessibility feature for those who'll be viewing or listening to it. It can be saved within PowerPoint for those accessing the presentation later on. So there is a live caption feature or even a dictate feature. I haven't used it too much, but you can have it write content as you're reading out. So let's go on to slide 5 here. Creating a new slide. So always use a new slide button rather than just creating a blank slide. So over here in your home tab, you have a new slide button, and you can use the defaults here. And it's important to use these because it already has the preset tags for the content that will be used by assistive technology. So it's a bad idea to do a blank slide and try to use the tool to create a text box, because it won't be properly tagged. So you can just simply use like your title and content, or whatever you need here. And also, you can go in and adjust your master slides to have placeholders to create accessible structure. And you also want to use your list tools here when I click on here on the text. So you do have your bulleted and numbered lists. You don't want to use the Shift Enter and then using your dash or the minus symbol to create your own list, because it won't be tagged appropriately. So also, if you don't want a title visually on the slide, we can position it off the viewing area or hide its visibility in the selection pane. So before I get too far into this, let me show you the master slides. Go into the slide master, we need to go to the View tab. And from the View tab, you want to click on Slide Master right here, and then you can get into the background menu and the font. So there's the background. You can adjust your fonts that are used in your slides, the colors, background styles, all of it. Just be mindful of the type of font. You don't want to use fancy fonts that are difficult to read, or colored text that may be too faint to see on a white background or your colored backgrounds, depending on what you change later on in your presentation. So you can get in here and experiment with your styles. And then when you're done, I had trouble when I first did this to find a way to get back to my presentation. You had to use the Close Master View button right here to get back to your presentation. Now, I mentioned the selection pane and hiding your slide title. Maybe for some reason you need more room on your slide, but you need the person using a screen reader to know where they are in the slideshow. So you don't want to delete it out, and it will be flagged later on when you do the accessibility check on here in PowerPoint. So to get to the selection pane, you want to make sure you're on the home ribbon here, and then you want to go over to the arrange menu right under drawing, and then you want to go over and click selection pane. Now, this is a pretty helpful tool, not just for hiding your slide title. And let me zoom out a little bit so we can see a little more of the stage, is what they tend to call that area outside your slide. So you can move your slide title just a little bit off the stage if you want to. You can do that. And that way your slide still has a title, but it won't be actually viewed during your presentation. But you can also use the title, the little eyeball symbol here to hide it. So also the selection pane shows a reading order of your slide, and it's a little weird because it reads from the bottom of this list here to the top. So the proper order, if I wanted it read in order, is, let me slide my little title back down, is the title will be at the very bottom, and then the content as you go up in order. So remember that as you're going through, just to click through your content working from bottom to top to double check. Now, the first object on the slide will be read first. So if you're adding content to your slide, maybe you're rearranging some of the objects, it will change how the reading order, it will just go by whatever you've stuck on the slide in what order. So that makes any sense. So let's go into the next one, and I'll keep my selection pane open for reading order. So here we have the title reads first, and we do have some images here we ought to drop in. So let me do that. Let me get my file folder here, and I have just some images I can drop in. So I'm dropping in just some simple little graphics here. I'm going to do just these two. So you can look, okay, I've thrown those in last, so they are on the very top of the list, you notice. So depending on how you create your slides can be different from your reading order. You'll want to go back and fix that. So we have the title first, and then next we have access and structure. And you notice it wasn't showing on the slide, but that was because we had it turned off here in the selection pane. So I'm going to turn that back on. And now, okay, well, it's reading all the text first, but maybe I want to have it go in order with the objects. So you can easily drag and drop your images into or the structure here. So let me go in order. I think, let's see if this is correct. So as you walk through here, just to make sure as you click through that it's reading it in order. There we go. So it's very easy to fix, but also I want to show you how to add alt text to your graphics. So if you click on one of your graphics and right click, you'll get your menu here, and then you can go down and look for the alt text for the graphic. Here we go, view alt text. And you see here, I've already added just a little bit of description, but it was automatically generated. And I don't think you should always depend on the automatic generated content there. Sometimes it's best, especially if you've got an image of people or something other than a graphic. Now, in this case, I think since it's just a graphic, it's not too far off from what I've done. Now, I want to point out here that you can always, whether you're working in Microsoft Word or even in Adobe Acrobat, is when you're adding or editing alt text, you can always mark an image as decorative. Now, when you do that, that means that you're saying that the objects, there's, it's not informative, and people using the screen reader won't miss out on something important if it's not read out loud. So when you mark it as decorative, a screen reader will just skip over as if it's not on the page. So just be careful. You don't want to, use that when you could end up skipping over something important. But in fact, an easy way, say if I had multiple objects that I thought were really, they should be marked as decorative, you can lasso multiple objects and mark them. And you can also group objects. So if I lasso all my objects, I can right click and you can group items. So maybe instead of marking them, decorative, you could just lasso and give alt text for the whole group. Just depending on the case or the scenario. If you need to ungroup it, you just click on the group, make sure the whole group's lassoed, right click again, go to group and say ungroup. So just a note there as you're working in here. So let's go on to the next slide here. So we've got another group of images. So once again, you can lasso them and you can right click and say group. I left one off. I'm going to hit Control Z, or you can use your undo button up here in the corner. And I'm going to select this item again and right click and then group again. So there we go. Okay. Now you notice up here while we're clicking on and working on the images, we already have an alt text button up here. So I find right clicking easy to do when I'm working, but you also have the items up here in the menu to work from. So just whichever way is easiest for you. So I'm going to say group of graphics. And you could be more descriptive than that. But for this example, I'm just going to be vague. Okay, now let's go on to the next slide, and that will automatically save our info. Now here is just a list of new degrees and certificates. This is just some old information I had out there that I just wanted to throw up on a slide. Just a good way to show an example. And what I had done was I created my own 3-column content by just taking kind of a blank slide and adding text boxes. Well, that's going to cause problems for reading order, and it won't be tagged appropriately. So it's not really accessible. So what we want to do is under the outline view, you want to click the outline view. And this is helpful to use while you're working or maybe to check toward the end. But you notice here for the slide number 8 here, new degrees and certificates, nothing's showing up. I mean, we have text here, but it's not going to show up in our outline. It's not going to be tagged appropriately because I created my own text boxes. So always use this outline view to quickly check the accessibility and the reading order also, because you can see if your bullet points are in in line here. And you notice each of our titles as we go through here are the main outline title here for each slide. So they're showing up. So what you would really want to do is probably take all your text and paste it somewhere like in Word, and then go over here, and then you would want to insert a new slide with content. And what you could also do is maybe adjust the layout of a slide. Maybe you can have 2-item content, or even using your slide master to adjust maybe the columns. Okay, so let me exit out of the outline view. So I'm going to go back to my view. I'm going to just say normal, and we're back to where we were. So just a note on creating your own text boxes. So in general, you want to avoid tables. I say this also in my creating accessible Word documents, is tables can be difficult for someone to navigate, and a lot of times we'll come across tables with merged cells or split cells, and that causes issues for someone using a screen reader to try and navigate. So maybe presenting the data in a different way by using headings, and then maybe a bulleted list, or just trying something other than tables. But if you need to, you can use a table, but you want to build one appropriately. So and now just a few notes I'm reading through down here is if you have hyperlinks for some reason in your table, which I would say use them outside of a table, you'll want to edit the links so that they don't break mid-sentence, and that's from Microsoft support. So I think whenever you're using hyperlinks, they should be very short. You should use a descriptive text, and if you have a long hyperlink that could break across, table cells or pages, then that's going to be an issue. So let's just pretend that we're going to draw a chart, and we're going to, let's say, add our own pie chart. So we're going to go to the insert chart and pie chart. So insert, excuse me, insert, and I'm going to find chart, and then we're going to just say a pie chart and say okay. Now, every time you add a chart, I don't know how many of you created one in PowerPoint, we'll have our Excel data here. I'm not going to mess with the data. I'm going to close that out. But I know it overlaps right now, but just for the sake of just going over this information, I'm going to try to move it aside here. And we'll just pretend we're not seeing this UT orange here, and pretend that's a different color. We want to click on our pie chart, and we can go here with our chart design, and we can format the color. Say we don't want to see, the UT orange that we have here in our shape field. You can easily adjust the colors, but we'll just pretend that we don't see that right now. But one helpful tool that I found is, once again, if you go to view and say grayscale, this is a quick way to see how well the contrast is between each of your colors. So you may need to tweak your colors. That's just an easy way to check contrast, but you can also use that Cooler's color contrast to kind of compare colors side by side in that way. Also, for your chart design, if we click on this here, we can not only edit data, but we can edit the chart. I'm going to actually right click this, and actually I don't even have to right click it when I already have my panel up for alt text, but you can for the whole chart, while it's lassoed, right click it and then go over here and say view alt text, and you can give a good description of what the information is being conveyed. Now, trying to decide whether is it good to list every single data point. Now, a pie chart maybe be pretty easy to describe each piece of the pie, the percentage, and then describe what it's trying to tell the person. But maybe with a line chart, that may be a little more difficult. So let's go on to our graph and charts notes here. So use high contrast colors, add alt text. You want to summarize the chart and just include key data points. So if we look at this one, maybe if there's a lot of data, you would just want to give an overview of what this chart's trying to convey. And also, I want to show you here, and let me zoom in a little more because I'm a bit zoomed out. I'm going to go over here to view again, and notice when I go to grayscale, you can't really differentiate the lines when you go to grayscale here. So you would probably want to change up the colors, the line thickness. You can go to the chart styles and change the whole style of the chart, but there's also some other ways to go about that. You can just go with the color here and change what you have for the information. So none of these seem to be very high contrast. So once again, it may be best not just to rely on color, but also perhaps the line thickness and maybe even dashed. So here we've got the grid line information, but you can also change the arrow types or the dash type. Now that's just for the grid lines, but we want to change the data points or the trend lines. You can actually click on those lines and change them that way. So you can change dash type here, so it'll be a little easier for someone rather than relying on color. So you have a lot of options here to play around with and to see if you can create something that's a lot easier to read. Now, audio and videos, PowerPoint supports closed captions and subtitles that are embedded in video files, and closed captions and subtitles stored in separate files that are inserted for a video or audio. Really, we just encourage you to just add maybe a link to a YouTube video on a slide, and then they can open their browser directly to that video. And that way, YouTube already has this automatic captions that person can turn on or off. And it would be much easier to deal with than trying to store separate files for your captions with the PowerPoint, and it's just so much easier to do. So I have a link here, but you could Google the support page, Microsoft for video captions. But I would encourage you just to rely on just adding a link to the YouTube video. Okay, here I have how to convert this slideshow to a PDF. But before we do that, I did skip over on creating hyperlinks. So let me go back to the previous slide here. So whenever you're wanting to create a hyperlink, say I've got another one here and I want to say visit the ETSU brand website for more information about video captions. We do have information on captioning and transcripts, but I'm going to highlight this. So visit ETSU brand website. So it's important to use descriptive text, and then I'm going to right click and then go to link. And here I have the text to display, which is already here on my page. And then I can put down the address. www. If I could type. So there we go. We got the link. Now we have the option here for screen tip, but once again, that's not always read by assistive software. You can add it in there if you want to, but I think it's just best practice is using your text to display or just using descriptive text on your slides. So I'm going to say okay, and there we go. And you can alter in your slideshow the defaults for hyperlink colors. So if for some reason you have a colored slide, background and you need to adjust the hyperlink color, you can do that. So just be mindful of whenever you use, say, a colored background like this. And we're going to, before we convert to a PDF, let's go ahead and run the accessibility checker here in PowerPoint. So let me close my panel out here. And how to do that, you just go to review, just like you would in Microsoft Word, and they have the check accessibility button. So when you click on that, you get a panel that shows you the errors or just warnings. So the errors here, we have missing alt text for all of those graphics. I think only one of them I made into a group with alt text. So it's very easy in Microsoft to fix these issues. It's great because you can just click on one of the errors and then you have an option to fix it. In this case, add alt text. So, you can go through and add your alt text and fix those issues. I won't go through and do that. I think you understand the gist of it. So, but here with our chart, we did not add an alt text for that one. So you can easily click on the button, fix that one, and for the line chart also. Now we've got warnings. So let's look again at the warning. So once again, there's the white text on that light colored background. So let's just fix the font color and go with the default black. And you notice as soon as you fix something, it disappears from your warnings or errors. And click on the next one. So this one also, if I had used that color contrast checker, you could see what this, just how well this white text goes on the blue, which, just using the accessibility checker here, you can find out pretty quickly if something doesn't work. So I'm going to just get rid of the shape fill, or you can just change the font color. And it still may be a good idea just to see, using maybe a contrast checker, is just to see, depending on font size, how well this contrast shows up. That maybe even when it disappears from your panel here, if you had a printout, that may cause an issue. So just to think about. And then it's also wanting me to check the reading order. So if you have a lot of objects here, you can click on Verify Object Order, and you can see. Now you notice here the reading order panel looks a little different than our selection pane. So the reading order, it's actually in the normal way we would read the content. So it starts with the title at the top and goes down, up, and you see here, reading order on this slide is a little different than what our selection pane did. So you can simply drag and drop and move content around here to amend that. So I'm going to, oh, and I also want to point out down here, it does tell you why you need to fix the error and steps to fix it. Sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes you have to do a little more research to figure out or understand why or how to fix. Microsoft does a pretty good job of telling you how to fix something. It's when you get into Acrobat with the PDF, it gets more difficult to fix your content. In fact, we always tell people if they can get back to the original file where they created, maybe in PowerPoint or Word, it's much easier to fix it in Word or PowerPoint than to try and fix it in the PDF. Okay, so I'm going to go back down to my last slide here. So we've checked the accessibility, and most of the accessibility tags are added to the PDF version. There may be a few things you had to look at and fix in Adobe, but if we were for some reason wanting to export this as a PDF, you would want to go to the File tab and then use the Save As feature, but let's walk through that right now. So Save As, and I want to say the More Options. Make sure you note where it's downloading, or saving the file. And then we want to click More Options. And this is very important. We want to go over here and find the More Options tool. We want to first make sure we're doing it, saving this as a PDF, which I meant to do in the last screen here. But once you have a PDF selected as the file type, you want to go into options, and you want to make sure you can go ahead and say open file after publishing, and you can kind of check yourself. But we're going to click on the options, and we want to export all of our slideshow. Make sure that there's slides. I would want to do the handouts. The text can get very small on the handouts and be difficult for people to read. So we want to make sure that it's just the entire slide. And then you can go in and you can include hidden slides or comments if you want. I'm going to leave those defaults unchecked. And then include printing information, or non-printing information, excuse me. So we do want to, since say you want to post this online, you'll want these tags and information that you've made for your accessible documents. So we want to include the properties where we gave it a file name, and of course, most importantly, structure tags for accessibility. So I'm going to click OK and save. Okay, so here's our slideshow, and let me zoom out a little bit. And let's go over here immediately to our tags. Now, if you don't have this tag showing up in your one of your toolbars here, you can go over here to the More Tools. And if you don't find More Tools, I think you can find that actually in the View panel. Sometimes the Show Hide, sometimes your tool pane is hidden. So you may have to adjust what's visible here in Acrobat. But when you open your More Tools, you can scroll down to Protect and Standardize, and you'll see I already have it, but you can add your accessibility button so that it will stay over here in your Tools panel. So then you would just click Add. So now let me get back to accessibility here. So you can click on the accessibility button, and let's run the accessibility checker here. And I'm sure we'll leave all the defaults here, and I'm going to say start checking. So every time you check a document, it's always going to show two issues in your document. And what it is that you'll have to manually check the reading order, which we would have done. I showed you that with the reading order panel in PowerPoint, but you can check again here, and also your color contrast, which luckily we can check that in PowerPoint before we export it. But you'll always see these two marked when you open your document, run the checker. So here we've got the alt text issue again. So that's been flagged. So each of those figures on that slide that I didn't give, you notice, are flagged once again. And our chart and our table. So it's always easier to fix these issues in your original the software that you used to create this presentation, so PowerPoint. So you can still go in here, and Sherry goes over how to fix documents in her training video. And you'll also find that video on our brand website at etsu.edu/brand. But if I click here and right click, say figure 1, you can say here fix, and it will automatically open up the alt text panel. So you could go through here and add alt text and fix these issues if you for some reason forget maybe certain images, and you can go through. And it also, once again, has the option to mark items as decorative, but that means the screen reader, once again, it will skip over entirely any of the images you mark as decorative. So, and then once you add alt text and get to the very end of all the images, you can say save and close, and that would automatically resolve these issues and they would disappear. And then here we have other elements. alt text, and this is probably the group, or this, for some reason, depending on how this was added to the presentation, it's kind of marked as an other element for some reason, but you could easily give that alt text too. Now let me show you your tags panel. So this is what your document looks like, I guess, to a screen reader, to that assistive software. So we have a tag for our entire document, and it highlights everything when you click on it. And then it gives sections for each slide as you go down. And then within the section, you have your heading. So say for slide 2, where we have best practices, that's our heading tag, H2. We use the heading 2 by default on those. And then within, it gives a second little section tag for this area of the slide, and you have your paragraph text, that's just simple text, and then it will add a list tag for your numbered list, or if you had bulleted lists, that content's marked. And so you can see each list item, you'll see it as a LI for each numbered piece of content. So if you're building your PowerPoint slideshow properly, or a Word document properly, these tags will be created properly, and someone with assistive software can easily navigate around and understand the information that you're trying to convey. So that's just a brief little overview of what your tags look like in your document in a slideshow. So I'm gonna close this out and call it a day, and I encourage you to make all your PowerPoint presentations accessible, and just make a habit of thinking of how others will interact with your presentation. Maybe that person in the back row of the classroom, or the conference room that you're presenting to, or the printouts, how they will look when you hand them out to someone. Thank you, and please check out our other trainings on our brand website.